And so I want to let you all know that the conversation is live, and I'd like to go ahead and pass this conversation on over to Eve Sheedy, and I'd like to welcome you all. So Eve, you now have the floor. Thank you. Oh, also, can we get everyone to go on mute? Thank you very much.
Okay, you can hear me, right? So Kelly, were you going to do some intro housekeeping first, or you want me to go ahead?
So as Kandee already said, number one, we want to welcome you guys for to this discussion. We appreciate that you're taking your time out to be with us today, so we can, learn about how we can better serve our community as well as our survivors. As Kandee said, we want to make sure that you guys are all on mute. We will be having someone in the chat room, and that will be monitoring the hand signs. So just in case someone you want to have a question, if you want to make a comment. The good thing about this discussion is that we're going to allocate some time for the audience to be able to participate, ask questions in the discussion. So we're really excited about that. So you'll have time to do that, but also I want you to start putting your questions, or either saying, hey, I have a question, or putting it in the chat. If you yourself don't want to answer the question, then either Jennifer, I, or Kandee will actually ask the questions for you, okay? In the event that we begin to talk about certain things that trigger you, that may bring up certain memories, we ask that you would kind of step away, if that helps, or do whatever you need to center yourself, or utilize your coping skills. Just step away from the conversation, because sometimes, even when I'm at my city meetings, whatever, I kind of get pissed off from time to time about what I'm hearing, and then I'm angry, so I have to step away, I have to tune out, and then get back in. So we just want to say thank you, and I'm going to pass it over to the brilliant Eve Sheedy.
You get angry about that, Kelly? No. Anyway, welcome to everybody, and thank you so much for being here with us today. We're really excited to be able to put on this conversation, Survivors and Services Discussing Support for Black and African American Communities. I will tell you, just as an aside, I sent my link to a bunch of people. So when we started, we had about 10 people named Eve Sheedy, which made me feel very, very welcome. But I think everybody has reclaimed their own name. So my name, I am actually Eve Sheedy, and I am the Executive Director of the County's Domestic Violence Council, which is housed in the county's Department of Public Health. But today, more importantly, this conversation is the result of a collaborative effort between, among the Positive Results Corporation, Kandee, Back to the Basics, Kelli, the DV Council, the Domestic Violence Alliance, and Amy Goldman, who's the chair of that, is on in the county's Office of Violence Prevention, run by Andrea Welsing, also in the Department of Public Health. So this is really a group effort. This conversation arose from conversations between Kandee, Kelli, and I about how we could best respond to the ongoing issues of racism that are present throughout Los Angeles County and beyond. We're really hoping that this is just the first step. We focus today on listening to our panelists and listening to all of you. And from that, hopefully being able to create action steps so that we can move beyond the conversation to make lasting change. I want to just note one thing. For those of you who, like me, are white, when you went to register, there was no box that said white or Caucasian. And that became, to some degree, some people, wrote back to us. And that's a natural thing. I'm not criticizing anyone for writing the emails. But I want to say that what turned out as something that was sort of part of Zoom life for the Positive Results Center really reflects the experience of so many people on this call and so many people in our community who have come to countless places where there is no box that says it's for Black women or Black people. and so forth. So not being included, expressly included, is something that, frankly, it's really good that we, all the white people, experience just for that moment, because it's something that the people who'll be talking to us today live with all the time. So I just want to say that even though we're doing this today on October 15th, this conversation is long overdue. And although now, we see so many videotaped incidents, that's not news. And the systemic racism that impacts every system that we have has been around for centuries. So although these conversations happen now, to be honest, we should have been having them all along. We've had some of them, but not enough, because we haven't made the changes that we need to make this system fair, equitable, and available to everyone in Los Angeles County. So I want to thank all of our panelists and our moderator for sharing their truth, for having the strength of character, dedication, and generosity of heart and spirit to provide the support and services that survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence need to survive and thrive. The women on this panel are each individually exceptional women, but they have also each confronted massive levels of racism, both in Los Angeles and within the domestic violence and sexual violence fields. They've had to overcome barriers that I, as a white woman, have not had to face. And it is time for us to make the changes that we need to make this a fair system, and to embrace everyone who does this work, to embrace everyone who's impacted by domestic violence and sexual violence. So I thank you all for being here. And I hope that this is step one of making a change to how we go forward to treat everyone in our wonderfully diverse county of Los Angeles feel welcome, feel supported, and feel safe. So it's my honor now to introduce the panel. Is Dr. Davis on, I hope? Dr. Charmaine Davis is the Director of Family Wellness at Genesee Center. Dr. Davis has over 25 years experience serving families in Southern California. She's currently training at the South Central Training Consortium, servicing the unattended to mental health and clinical counseling needs of diverse populations around Los Angeles. She received her master's degree from Pacific Oaks College and her PsyD from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Welcome, Dr. Davis. Kandee Rochelle Lewis, and I just want to say I just learned her middle name from getting this bio, is the Executive Director of the Positive Results Center and is a certified domestic violence, sexual assault, and suicide awareness prevention advocate addressing trauma from a cultural and age perspective. Her trainings for youth and parents, facilitated events, and the creation of youth peer advocacy programs. Kandee Lewis provides tools and strategies to form and maintain healthy, productive relationships. The LA County Board of Supervisors named Kandee its Woman of the Year in 2017. Vanguard recognized her as the most influential African-American in Los Angeles in 2018, and she received the Johnny L. Cochran Award for Youth Violence and Prevention. I do want to say I've known Kandee for, I don't know how long now, for a while, and I have watched her build the Positive Results Center into an amazing place and an amazing force. Kandee herself is a force of nature, and we are all grateful for her work and for her resilience. So, and I thank you so much. She's hosting this on Zoom. So Tara Peterson is also on, I saw her. Tara Peterson is the Chief Executive Officer of the Ywca Glendale. She is responsible for the executive and administrative leadership of the Ywca Glendale, which strives to eliminate racism and empower women, and has played a pivotal role in revitalizing the agency's 95-year legacy of supporting local women and girls by expanding programs and reach and igniting a change in the culture and conversation around domestic violence and racial justice in Glendale and surrounding communities. Tara has spent a decade working at the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, which is the state's domestic violence coalition, including 5 years as its executive director, leading statewide policy, legislative, and budget advocacy efforts. And I was, I'm giving my little personal thing here. I was on the board when Tara was the ED. Tara is a courageous, brilliant woman who has really led the state and led the issue of domestic violence and worked very hard every single day to ensure racial equity, even against insurmountable odds that she'll talk about. Sharon Shelton is the vice president of the YWCA Greater Los Angeles. She leads a staff of 125 in 5 distinct program areas: early childhood education, clinical trauma services, gender-based violence, senior engagement, and workforce development. She also serves as a commissioner on the Alcohol and Drug Commission addressing issues of substance abuse. She's the chair of the Los Angeles County Community Action Board addressing anti-poverty, and also serves on the Los Angeles County Women and Girls Initiative, appointed to that board by the Board of Supervisors. I just met Sharon a couple years ago, I think, and she is amazing. I'm so glad that she can be here with us. She is truly a leader in addressing the needs, the rights, and the conditions of women and girls throughout the county. Bernita Walker is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Project Peacemakers Incorporated, a domestic and intimate partner violence program located in South Los Angeles since 1995. As a violence prevention practitioner, a DV survivor, and a retired deputy sheriff for the County of Los Angeles, she's been in the field of DV and interpersonal violence for over 40 years, where she began by co-founding Genesee Center, a shelter for battered women and their children in South LA. Presently, she serves as the representative of the new 9th Council District for Councilman Karen Price on the City of LA Domestic Violence Alliance, and co-chair of the DV and Religion Committee for the LA County DV Council. So I will tell you that if you've touched domestic violence in LA County in the last, I don't know, Bernita, what, 25, 30, 40 years, you've met Bernita and probably been trained by Bernita. Bernita has been a constant rock for all of us who do this work, regardless of the color of your skin, your age, or whatever. And she's probably been dealing with the issue you're dealing with before you dealt with it. So we're honored to have Bernita. And last but not least is our moderator, Kelli Dillon. Kelli is the executive director of Back to the Basics and a program manager. I think it's program manager at Positive Results Center. Kelli has many other jobs as well. She's very dedicated to her community and is always helping someone either in a formal way or informal way, whether it be in the middle of the night, on the weekend, or whatever. I do want to say personally, I met Kelli about 11 or 12 years ago when I was making a film about the connection of domestic violence to gang violence. And for me, meeting Kelli was a life-changing event. She is an amazing, amazing person. She's my friend, she's my teacher, she's my guide, and she is really part of my family. And there was a hole in my life before Kelli, and I am so glad she is here. She'll moderate this conversation. And I want to say, like Kelli, each of the women on this panel has overcome significant racial and other barriers to do the work that has come to be a defining part of their lives. I personally thank them and thank them on behalf of the DV Council for participating, but more importantly, I thank them for their courage and the strength that they show every day as they help to lead us to a better place. Kelli?
Thank you, Eve. I feel like that was a setup because now I want to cry. My voice is all shaky and everything. I got all these emotions going on inside, and I have to moderate. But thank you so much, Eve, for introducing all of the panelists. And I just want to say that it is an honor for me to be able to moderate the discussion among such strong Black leadership in the domestic violence, sexual assault, and violence prevention field. I am honored. Everyone that has been on this panel has been, and also Eve as well, has mentored me, coming from a place of advocacy, a survivor, as well as a peer advocate, and now a professional and an expert in my field. And so it's been a long journey. And for those that are on right now, before we move forward, that are survivors, that are coming out of their own, their own journey, their own challenges, and want to get into this field, I just want to let you know that it is possible. That it is possible for you to go from one level to the next, depending on how you see yourself, of you wanting to give back. And the women that Eve has introduced are more than willing to give their open expertise, internship, and knowledge over this span of, we got about 100 years of expertise that's on the panel right now. So, but just there. So I just want to just give that shout out to survivors that's on here and that want to also become professionals, seen and respected as professionals in this field. So I just want to say that. So to the panelists, as I want to ask everyone to share briefly, given each person about 2 minutes, because I know that Eve introduced your agency and your organization, but I want to know a little bit, and the audience want to know a little bit more about your agency and how you feel that your agency uniquely serves the community. And each one of you got 2 minutes. And just because I don't want to get fired, I'm going to start with Miss Kandee Lewis. Miss Kandee Lewis, can you give us at least about 2 minutes, please?
Kelly, you know what? We'll have a serious conversation after this. So, hi everyone. I am so honored to be here. Thank you, Eve, for really bringing us all together. And I thank all of the panelists, and especially all of you that are participating on the call, and everyone who's in Facebook. So, Positive Results Center, formerly Positive Results Corporation, addresses trauma from a cultural and age perspective. We really have 4 categories that we work in. One is youth development. We believe that violence and abuse begins in the womb. And so we focus on the awareness and prevention. And so what we do is we work with youth to help build their self-esteem, to teach them what domestic violence is. And they already know, because see, when they live in an abusive home, when they watch their mother, their father, their brother or sister, or grandparents, they also are experiencing violence. But very often they don't have the tools, the skills, or even the words to say what it is. And they feel like it impacts them, and they turn it inwards, where they feel like they're the cause. So we really help them to understand what trauma, violence, and abuse is. And then we give them the tools and the skills, everything that we learn, starting from my first mentor, Miss Bernita. Everything that we learn, we then teach the youth, because they very seldom come to us first. Kids go to each other. And so we give them all the skills and tools. We also work with providers and educators, especially those who are youth serving, and we help them to understand what trauma looks like from a culture perspective, as well as how their trauma impacts the people that they're trying to serve. We do community workshops and events, and so every Thursday you will find us here on Zoom or Facebook Live doing a workshop. We also do spoken word for mental health. We have a group of an amazing youth and young adults in Antelope Valley that are doing workshops on mental health. And there's a lot more. I think my 2 minutes is up. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but you can contact us. You will receive our information for all of the panelists by at the end. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kandee. So I'm gonna move on to Miss Karen. Is Miss Karen here?
It's Dr. Davis.
Oh, Dr. Davis, I'm sorry.
I'm
Dr. Davis.
sorry. I'm having so many internet issues. Yeah. So Karen, I'm sitting in for Karen today.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, do you want to talk to us a little bit more about Genesee Center? You have two.
Yes, 2 minutes. I'm looking at my clock. So, so just I will just have to piggyback. I mean, I think we're all doing such an amazing job. I love the Genesee being a trauma-informed agency, and being just having that cultural sensitivity and cultural awareness component. Our clients, as the topic is of racial disparities and things of that nature of this topic today, our clients deal with so much more than just domestic violence, right? You know, sometimes they're in the position where they want to, do I want to live and stay here, or do I want to lose my children? Because we know when the call goes in, DCFS is coming for them, and which is a whole nother conversation. So I think our ability to wrap our arms around our clients and offer them all the tools that they need to be self-sufficient, mentally well, legal, small issues that we think are really, really small, like tickets, things that legal can help them with to kind of help them to leave Genesee and be able to live on their own, getting them credit building, you know, resources. And just, I think Genesee is just a great a resource for our clients to, you know, go out into the world and be self-sufficient. And that component of cultural component and being able to understand the informed issues and where they come from and how they see the world, and being able to understand that, I think that's one of the greatest components that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, for sharing that with us. So I'm going to move on to Ms. Bernita. Ms. Bernita, would you just share a little bit more about where Project Peacemakers is now and how you are uniquely serving your community?
I will do my best. Project Peace. Good afternoon, everybody. I see so many names that I am familiar with. I can't see all the faces, but I see your names, and it's really good to have you on with us. And I'm glad to be here. I'm grateful to God to be here, and I really mean I'm grateful to God. And those who know me know what I'm saying. Project Peacemakers. We work with. The reason why Project Peacemakers was started was because at that time, only 3 to 4% of victims ever went to shelter. So what happens to the other 93 to 97%, 96 to 97%? Those are who we went after to help, to provide services for. So we do everything except shelter. We've done restraining. We were one of the first restraining, fax filing restraining agencies that there was, and we've been doing it all the time. We have a huge rate of getting our restraining orders approved, fax filing restraining orders. And we do, of course, parenting, domestic violence, anger management. We have a SUDS program. For those of you who don't know, that's substance users disorder. We have that as well. We're also approved by the probation department for child abusers treatment. We do that as well. We do it in English and Spanish. All of our classes are in English and Spanish. Because we service those communities in South Central Los Angeles. Also, we do training, the 40-hour training, twice a year. People try to get me to do more than that. I can't do more than that. I'm old. And so, I'm old. So anyway, we do the training twice a year, but we do presentations to different areas. My biggest focus right now is really the faith community. With United Faith Network through Genesee Center, we're working on that, as well as we're working on it in the area that we service, particularly 77th Division, and trying to get the faith community to understand they have a responsibility for us in addressing this issue of domestic violence. I am grateful for this point, this time now, because of where we came from. When we started Genesee Center, it was all about a man hitting a woman. That is not the issue. It is so much more that we have to address, and we need everybody's participation. I can't remember if E said it or not, but I say this all the time. We're in a war, you all.
Yeah.
We're in a war.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to be a warrior, you need to change what you're doing.
Bam.
Because we need
Thank
everybody. We need
Thank you.
everybody doing what they're supposed to do. Don't be
Yes.
fearful to talk about what you've been through, because that's the only way we're going to be able to get to the ones that don't know, that are locked in because they don't know anybody else has gone through what they've gone through. And I've been doing this for 40 years, and I have never stopped once to talk about what I went through. This is real. Okay, I'll shut up because you know I can go and go and go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernita. But that was really powerful. That's where we at right now. And really what this conversation is about is that how can we come together as a community strategically to fight some of these systematic issues and oppressive issues, racism and so forth. And like you said, and go after that equity and go after that equality that we're really looking for. So thank you so much. Ms. Sharon, would you like to give us 2 minutes, please, of the unique services that your agency provides to the community?
Thank you so much, Kelly. It is an honor to be on the panel with my sisters. 30 years ago was one of the first times that I heard Bernita Walker, and I vowed never to follow her on a panel. And so I'm sure you didn't set it up that way, Kelly, but thank you, Bernita. My sisters, Kandee, we work so well together because we are all very dedicated in terms of Black women and providing services to the community. The YWCA Greater Los Angeles is 126 years old. We have 5 distinctive services. We have an early childhood education program, and so we have over 400 slots throughout Greater Los Angeles, from the Valley, South Los Angeles, East Los Angeles, Compton. We also have a clinical trauma, and I think that is a theme that we have been talking about, because we understand that our community needs trauma intervention, prevention services. We also provide gender-based services. We operate 3 rape crisis centers. We're on college campuses: USC, Cerritos Community College, Cal State Long Beach, Cal State Dominguez Hills. We also have a senior engagement program. We believe that we want to make sure that we're providing services to the very young and also our senior populations. We also have a workforce development program. The YWCA Greater Los Angeles operates our social enterprise, which is a print center. And so many of our workforce development participants are learning to work through our print center and other areas that we have. And so we believe that our advocacy efforts demand that we work with all of the panelists in their organizations. The Genesee Center, we don't have a shelter. We adopted them and made sure that in the pandemic, we wanted to help our sister. There are no better services than the women on this panel in terms of the services that they provide domestic violence. So thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And last but not least, we have Ms. Tara. Ms. Tara, would you like to share? Tara's like, wait a minute, hold up. Did I just hear my name? Can you please share with us what the YWCA provides as well?
Hi, everyone. This is Tara. Thank you for allowing me the space and time to be here with you all. YWCA Glendale, we have a similar mission to our sister program, YWCA Greater LA. And you're probably wondering, why is YWCA Glendale on this call? There are no Black folks in Glendale, but we only make up 2% of the population, but we just passed a historical sundown resolution. So part of the work we do here in Glendale, in addition to our domestic violence work and providing safety and services for victims of domestic violence and their children, we also focus on specifically on racial justice. And so in addition to making sure that we are doing our domestic violence work through a lens of anti-racism, we also have a specific racial justice initiative that really looks at all racial justice issues, but more specifically around anti-Black racism. And so that's kind of the work we do, that we've been doing at the YWCA Glendale. And so we are a mainstream domestic violence organization that I like to tell people, which means that, you know, we have access to funding, we've had access to resources, and access to support survivors in our community that other communities often don't have access to. But with that, I've also noticed extreme inequities within our own organization. And as a Black-led organization, we really had to step back and take some time to address those issues. And I'll share more about the work we did that and how mainstream organizations who are often inaccessible, outright, sometimes discriminatory, we were also one of those organizations that had those practices. And so I'm very committed to addressing, how we can make services more culturally relevant for victims of domestic violence. It's work that I've done for over 10 years. My first job at the coalition, when I started the coalition, was around providing technical assistance and training on how to provide services to communities of color and reach unserved, underserved communities. So I'm really excited about this discussion, and I'm excited that we're at this point where I feel like for many, many years we have acknowledged, we have apologized, but we haven't really did the work inward or outward to really amend some of the injustices that have happened in our movement, not only to leaders of color, but also to the women or victims of domestic violence and the people that we serve.
Thank you so much, Tara. And so to the audience, thank you so much for you guys presenting the unique services that you bring to the community. And as we know, and I've been looking up on the chat, there's so many different other agencies that's here, the Black Women's Project, the LA County Public Health, MLK Trauma Center. So we know it's a lot of people that's here that provide their services. And like Kandee and Eve said, if you want to give a shout out in the chat room, who you are, what you have to offer the community, how to get in contact you, then like I said, let's keep that chat rolling over there. And so let's dive into the discussion. Okay, you guys are ready? You ready to get into these questions? Okay. So I know that we all discussed some questions, and Eve brought up a great question, which was so far as race and racial equity, right? And working in this field, working in the sexual assault, domestic violence, and violence prevention field, as a woman of color or as an agency that's looking to address cultural issues and cultural needs, or Black communities specifically, how has it been entering into the field? And can you describe what that was like for you and your agency? Because some agencies like YMCA is well known, YWCA is well known, but like smaller agencies like Project Peacemaker, Positive Results Corporation, and so forth, are considered grassroots and a little bit harder to break into that field. So as number one, Black leadership, as well as agencies that address cultural specific agencies, how was it for you guys? And if a couple of you guys can answer that, of breaking into this, what was your experience in entering into this field?
I've already unmuted myself, seeing as though I'm the oldest one in here.
Okay, and let me just say this, please be respectful of time, because we on a time limit. But you do have 4 minutes to answer, Ms. Bernita, so don't worry.
Okay. I'll set no, I won't. Y'all just tell me when to shut up.
Okay.
Okay. Let me explain. And I kind of shared a little bit to the panel yesterday as we were talking. When Genesee Center was started, when we first got involved with the movement, we didn't know what we were doing or where we were going to get anything from, any support from. We just knew that we were 5 Black women who had a desire to work for the field of domestic violence, to address the field of domestic violence, because we had all been victims. So the first meeting that we went to was held at what they call the Big Blue House in Santa Monica. Some of you are familiar with it. And it was a SCBW, Southern California Coalition of Battered Women meeting. As a matter of fact, it was before that, because that particularly wasn't setting. But anyway, we were the only 2 Blacks that were there at the meeting. And when they started the discussion about the funding, because that's really what it was around, was about the Senator Presley bill that gave the shelters funds. And that's what we were going after. The question came up after we introduced ourselves from one of the other persons that were representing a shelter. What are they doing here? And that's just how she said it. What are they doing here? And I was looking around to see who they was, because I knew she couldn't be talking about us. I mean, we were there. We said what we were there for. And then someone, the person that, I almost called her name. Anyway, I can't think of her name. that was in charge of the SCCBW at that time, she said, what do you mean? What are they doing? Everybody has a right to be here. And then she said, but that's the way they live. And what she was referring to is, she said that that's the way Black people live. We live that way. We live domestic violence. We are angry people. We are all negative type of people. And I really took offense to that, because that's not the issue. As we go through this information today, I'm hoping that we will recognize that there are a lot of things that have pushed the Black community into the situation that they're in, primarily not being accepted as human beings. And this goes all the way back of 400 years we're talking about. We cannot forget what we have gone through during this time, because that's what has put us in the place we are now. We don't have the type of communication that we really would like. We don't have the type of programs for our young Black men that we really would like. We don't have the type of programs for our young Black women that we really would like. What we're doing, just of us, those few of us agencies that are in South Central, is really the tip of the iceberg. We have to get deeper in that. So that was the way we were received. For many a years, when I started Project Peacemakers, it wasn't as bad, because everyone already knew who I was. They knew the reputation. And when I was at Genesee Center, I was not only the assistant director for 13 years, I was also the bookkeeper. So all of the agencies that were funding money, they knew that we knew how to handle our money correctly, because I never had a bad report. So those types of things helped us to be able to start Project Peacemakers. And I just went right on out and did what we were supposed to do. And we are a small agency. We are 12 on staff, but only 4 or 5 of them are full-time. The rest of them are all part-time, but we still service over 200 to 250 families a month. So I think I'm through with my 4 minutes, and I hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much. No, that was excellent.
Kelli, if I could.
Yes, I just want to say something real quick before I pass it to you, Ms. Sharon, is that you brought up a point about how you keep the money, because I have heard over and over again during this time that Black led or Black ran or Black owned agencies do not know how to manage their funding. And that's the reason why they don't stay in operation too long. Or there's a system, there's a sense of distrust toward giving African-American led agencies certain levels of funding. And so I just want to say that I'm glad that you said about your bookkeeping, because that is an issue as to the level of equity towards agencies being able to receive the type of funding that other agencies that don't even do half the work that we do, especially in the South LA area. Ms. Sharon.
Thank you, Kelli. And so this time choosing to follow Lady Bernita. And so I think I was fortunate in that there were women around like Bernita that I could learn from. And so it was a confusing time for me coming into the field, because I came in at a time of the O.J. Simpson trial. And so it was very chaotic in terms of, I think I wasn't clear in terms of, I was always very clear that I wanted to work in racial justice. And at that time worked for the Rosa Parks Rape Crisis Center, which was a part of SCLC. And I was clear that I wanted to work within the racial justice movement. But what I saw were 2 different issues in terms of racial justice and gender-based violence, domestic violence, sexual assault. I sort of separated them in my mind, if you will, because I was clear that I wanted to work in the Black community with the entire Black community, with my sisters, but with my brothers as well. And I wasn't sure how I could do that simultaneously together. And so women like Bernita really kind of helped me to pave the way. I also was fortunate enough to work at the Rosa Parks Rape Crisis Center and said, I want to meet Rosa Parks. Has she ever been here? And someone said, well, when we first opened. And so I heard she was coming to Los Angeles for a book. And so I called her agent probably 30 times. And so the agent said if I would promise not to call again, she would do what she could to bring Rosa Parks by the Rosa Parks Center. We happened to be having a training that night with the volunteers I had an opportunity to speak with Rosa Parks saying, the racial justice and the gender-based violence, I don't know where to go. And Rosa Parks said that you do not separate them, that they go together, which brought me to the YWCA Greater Los Angeles. As my YWCA sister said, Tara Peterson, our mission is the elimination of racism, the empowerment of women. So it was Rosa Parks who really put me on the pathway to making sure that I embrace both of those, what we now call the intersectionality in terms of race and gender, and then also having, again, women like Bernita, and I'm sure Tara will talk about it, because what was in that paper and what you did, my sister CEO Glendale, was genius, and we have got to talk about it in terms of women in power and what we can do in our communities. Because even though I certainly embrace working within a field of violence against women, it was difficult in terms of seeing who was at the top. In terms of the CEOs, the executive directors, we were part of the line staff, but there were very few women of color, African American, Black women, leading organizations. And so I think that's crucial, and it's imperative that we're at the top, that there are women like Bernita that stick around and train us all, so that when my sister Kandee Lewis is having something, we're not pitting against ourselves. I'm like, Kandee, how can I help? How can I help in terms of financially? How can I help in terms of supporting you? And so we all do that because it is about the community. And so I think I feel so good to be with my sisters on the panel. And so that's how I came into the movement in that chaotic time, in terms of during that O.J. Simpson, and was thrust into it. And I will not leave. Eve Sheedy knows that my call for today is that in South Los Angeles, if you are a victim of sexual assault, you are taken out of the community. We do not have a SART site in South Los Angeles, and that is the fight that I will take. And so while I am a woman of a particular age, I've got enough fight in me. Bernita has taught me that, to stick around and to make sure that that happens. So thank you so much.
And on that note, I'm going to jump in. Tara?
Oh, I was just going to piggyback on Sharon, but go ahead.
Okay. So I came in, I think, different from most people. I came in from corporate America. And as such, I was looked at as a villain. Who are you and why are you here? And especially as a Black woman and a darker shade Black woman, like, who are you here? Why are you here? And what do you have to say? And I had so many people disrespect me. Did I say had? I still have sometimes people that want to disrespect me. But being the person that I am, and I'm born and raised right in South Central Los Angeles, I am a fighter. I don't fight with my hands, I fight with my brains, with my tongue, and with my pen. And so when I came in, I immediately identified that there was a problem, but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to address it. And so I went to who I saw were leaders, and I went to Bernita, and I learned from her. And Bernita has always been just the most welcoming. And I'm gonna say not every person, and not even every person of color, and not even every Black woman has been accepting and supporting. And so that's a concerning issue. And I'm just gonna be real, I'm gonna keep it honest, because that's who I am. And then I partnered with some agencies so that I could learn. And I think that was really important. So today, we are and I call us a boutique. We're small, but we're mighty. And we do amazing work and have been doing amazing work. And it's sometimes really difficult to continue to have that same old horn, because not only, so let me back up. We are trusted, respected leaders in the community. You know why? Because the community says so. And when the community says so, then that is when you know that you're doing the work. And the problem comes in when there are big, giant agencies, and I'm not saying the big, giant agencies don't do good work, But when you close the door at 5 or 6, and we're still answering the phone at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and people are still calling us. And when you look at the work that we do, as Kelli said, our agency, we see and support and service a couple thousand people a year. And we do workshops and trainings for several hundred people, but then we turn around and we support other people, like, for instance, Department of Mental Health and Public Health. And it's crazy to hear people say, well, really, what is it that you all do? Or how is it that you do this work? Or how are you getting this funding when yet and still major agencies call us, but they don't want to call us when there's money to be put on the table? Or they want to call us when there's $1,000 or $5,000, where we should be getting the 200, the 300, the 500,000, and the $1 million, because we're doing the work, because we're trusted and respected. And our agency, although we are focused on the awareness and the prevention as opposed to the intervention, I want to say this, and no disrespect to any shelter here, but before they get to you, they come to us. They come to us and they seek our support. And if it was not for us, half the time they would not even get to a shelter, because although what we're doing is we're saying these are the services that you need, we're still supporting and pushing our shelter partners, because it is essential that those services remain. But it's also essential that the community-based, the boots on the ground people that are respected by the community are also seen and also respected. And respect comes not only when we walk in the room, but when we walk out of the room. And when there's funding on the table, call us. Don't call us after and tell us that you got a grant. Call us and say that there's a grant, that this is an opportunity, and you can get some funding too. And then also speak up and advocate for us. I think that's my time.
If we were in person, I would stand up and give you a standing ovation, Kandee. Thank you. And I'm sorry for interrupting, but I would stand up and give you a standing ovation for saying that. Thank you so much.
There was many claps and thumbs up for you, Kandee, on that one. So thank you so much. Miss Sharon, you was getting ready to say something as well. No, not Miss Sharon. It was someone else.
Tara.
Was it anyone else? Was it Miss Tara? Okay, Miss Tara. Okay, thank you.
So I'm gonna, with all due respect to my the amazing women that are on this panel with me, the amazing Black women who are really working in the trenches, that are working in Black communities, supporting Black families directly. My experience is a little bit different, because I have always worked in a mainstream organization. I entered this movement, I would say, after the O.J. Simpson era, when funding became available for organizations to hire, I would say, token positions, right? So there was this big push on hiring positions that were more around token positions. So my first position in the domestic violence movement in a mainstream organization was as an African-American outreach counselor. And my job and my responsibility was to bring more Black women into the organization for support groups, to provide services. But the challenge is the information I was given to present to them, the support group curriculum, the services that I was told to provide, were not culturally responsive. So just because you put me in that position, and if you give me the same curriculum that you are doing, that we all remember the tell me how you're feeling today, the feeling chart, when we would go in a support group and people they'd be happy and all these different feelings. Well, half of those words, the women I was working with were like, none of those feelings resonate for me. None of those, I can't relate to that happy chart, that chart with all the different feelings, because I'm pissed. I'm mad, I'm angry. You know, my kids are getting on my, I don't see anything for my kids getting on my nerves. I don't see a face for, I can't pay my light bill. So I was really frustrated early on in the fact that I was put into this position that at first I felt I came to with a lot of pride. I then went to immediately went to the coalition, doing coalition work. And in that role, I started at the very bottom. I started as a project coordinator, and I have been given so many opportunities. I had so many mentors, from Adrienne Lamar to Karen Earl, to many of you that are out there today, that really mentored me and guided me in my my career path, that led me to become the executive director of the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, one of the first ever African-American executive director of the California partnership in domestic violence, but a lot of people that come into this field may not even know that because my history was erased. The work that I did was erased because once I no longer was that person that people thought I was, when I was no longer that good, following the rules, African-American leader, when I found myself in personal trouble, when I found myself being a victim of domestic violence and then eventually falsely arrested during my time at the partnership, I saw immediately how everything changed. The support changed. Here I was, the executive director who led the movement to restore domestic violence funding, $20 million to domestic violence shelter programs, who brought together the 2 state coalitions that fought, and that was not healthy for the field. And now everything that I have done has now been irrelevant and has been erased. And sorry, this is like the first time I share this publicly, but it's been extremely hurtful, and having to feel like I had to leave the organization the way that I did, and then not feel supported in general by the organization that I spent 10 years working for, and not being able to leave with my head held up high and gracefully. And so I come in this work in a different way, wondering why now we are still having these conversations. Why am I still one of the only African-American executive directors in a mainstream organization, even in California? There's not very many of us. And why is that the case? And why haven't we yet come up with strategies to really amend? And I feel like we've talked about, we've apologized, we've acknowledged, but what have we really done to amend? When I think about the movement and domestic violence movement in California, it was founded by Black women. It was founded by Bernita. There was a Women of Color coalition that founded this work and advocated for the programs and services that we have today, that many of us mainstream programs benefit from. And the fact that every time there's additional funding for underserved communities, when there's a funding cut, that's the first thing that goes. Prevention is the first thing that goes. Communities of color funding is the first thing that goes. And we roll that into the mainstream programs and say, okay, we're gonna roll this funding into you all, and now we're not gonna fund these culturally specific programs anymore. And then we come back 10 years later and wonder why we don't have this funding anymore and this funding doesn't exist. And so I really feel that as mainstream organizations, we have a responsibility to center the lives and the voices of Black women in our organization as employees, but also survivors of our participants. Because what I have witnessed in my work at the Ywca Glendale, when I came in, the first thing I did, I went to our shelter, and there was a Black woman in the kitchen. I turned to her and I said, "Hey sis, how are you doing?" She told me she was in that shelter for 2 weeks, and I was the first person that ever spoke to her. She's been in our shelter for 2 weeks and no one has spoke to her. I immediately said, this is a problem. I asked to see her file. I want to see the case notes. And every case note I read in that file was, Tanisha was asking to turn the heater down. She didn't like the supplies we gave her. She wanted more tampons. There was nothing about we helped her fill out a transitional housing application. We provided her with education on schools for her children. We helped her enroll her kids. But when I pulled the other participants, the non-Black participants, case notes, that's what I saw and that's what I read. And that's when I knew we had a problem. I know I gotta go. I've got my 4 minutes up. So that's when I knew I had a problem. So my thing to all the mainstream domestic violence organizations out there, if you are running an organization, you need to really center the voices of your Black staff and your survivors and find out what's really going on in your programs.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tara. I hated to wrap that up because you were so powerful. You were so open, honest, and transparent. And so, and I think I saw a lot of heads nodding, a lot of love going your way. So, you know, thank you so much for being brave and to share that story with you. Before we move on to the next question to all our panelists, I want to make sure I got my time, because at 3 o'clock, around 3 o'clock, we're going to start moving towards the audience and have them answer certain questions as survivors or also service providers. But I do want to share how I came into this as well, right? So as a DV survivor, you know, I was given through Jenesse Spears. Jenesse Spears from Seeking Peaceful Solutions was my mentor. She took me under her wing and navigated me not only community grassroots, but she really navigated me politically, because of the politics that go on with this type of services. She navigated me through the politics. And with that, she introduced me to my fairy godmother, Ywca. I call her my fairy godmother, but she's my fairy godmother. But she introduced me to Eve, in which we began to work on Violence Connected. Eve then connected me to Bernita and Kandee. And then Kandee introduced me to a whole other so many other people that was in this field. But through their collaboration, through their support and my storytelling, you know, I was able to get an opportunity to work as a case manager for the first time in a, like you say, a really kind of like a Main Street organization as well. And for me, I was really intimidated because I was coming from Survivor, having gone through some of the education, went through the training with Bernita, the Jewish Women's Family Center and stuff like that. And then I was able to become a case manager. But I wanted to talk a little bit, about how the respect of those who go from being survivors and clients and then going into a place of professionalism, and how a lot of times the survivor is caught or stuck in the exploitation of their story. How the agency wants them to continue telling their story or this powerful story over and over and over again, but not respecting them as a equal in a staff, professional, you know, or either they want to hire on a very intelligent, capable, knowledgeable survivors, but want to keep them in a peer advocacy role instead of allowing them to also move forward in leadership within the agencies. And so it took me about a good 7 years of being in this field, working my ass off, telling my story, helping other clients and case managers in my community, doing crisis intervention, gang intervention, for me to be even, I believe, seen as a professional, seen as someone who should be respected in their voice. I know that while I was in the Main Street agency in which I worked for, I was telling my program manager, my site manager at the time, that I don't think this will work. This community, these particular clients are gang affiliated. These particular clients do sex work. These clients, you know, this particular community doesn't trust any social or government entities. I don't think this strategy works. I don't think that we're going to lose the client if this happens. And it was this feeling of the fact that I hold these degrees and these titles and these letters behind my name, which makes me feel, you know, it was making me feel that because those titles was behind my supervisor name, that they knew more than what I knew when I, the survivor, was the one who lived through it. And I think that when we get into the positions, it's like, I feel that when we go higher, I feel like we have a moral obligation to remember what it was like for us to be in those positions of rising into a place of power and influence, to be able to make decisions and truly shape how services are done in our community, and not to continue with the barriers and the challenges that are out there that we have to go through ourselves, right? But it seemed like when it never fails, it seemed like it was funny when we start off and we say, okay, when I get in a position or when they give me the funding, this is what I'm going to do. But because the contract is attached to these certain stipulations, you get what I'm saying? Or these protocols and procedure, then, you know, there we go. We're perpetuating the same barriers, the same challenges within our community that we said that we wanted to change once we got in there. And so that's the reason why I've been working from a place of independency and with agencies, and for me, cultural specific agencies that will allow me to serve the community the way I know that the community needs to be served. So with saying that, moving into the next question, and I'm just gonna see if we can give about two panelists that can answer this, which is that what systems or procedures do you feel that is in place that create real barriers for you and your agency to be able to serve the community from a cultural standpoint, the way you feel that they should be served? So I need two, Bernita, and who else? I need one more to answer that. Sharon. Okay. So Bernita, you go first. So it's pretty funny, Sharon, that you said you don't like following Bernita, but you
Go ahead, Sharon. Go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, you've been following her all day. So
Thank you, Kelli.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys 4 minutes. I'm gonna give you guys 3 minutes apiece, so we can then move on to the audience. I want to hear from the audience. So thank you, Sharon. You can go first.
Thank you, Kelli, and shout out to Jenesse Spears. I went to grad school with her, and we talked about that 20 years ago when I was in school with her. And so I think that's often a barrier. But just yesterday, I was speaking to the county about data. I think we are clear that there is data that really illustrates the issues in the Black community, whether that's domestic violence, sexual violence. I think we have to make that data work for us. So we need sort of action-oriented data because it's there. And so to your point, Kandee, and you're right, if the data's there and we know that our communities are in need of services and funds, okay, well, where is it? And so do we just wait at the mailbox for the check to come? I think we have to be instrumental in what that means in terms of turning that data so that it works for us and turning that data into policy. Because I do think that there is a significant need. Also to your point in terms of, I think when we operate organizations, we need to make sure everyone has their value. And most of the time, Kelli, when you're going to workshops, when I'm at a statewide conference and I'm saying, well, where are all the people of color? Where are the Black women? They weren't able to come because they know how to operate the organization and deliver the direct services. And so you can't afford to leave them off the direct line, service line. We have got to value those employees who indeed know what it's like to operate the organization. And when I say value them, compensate them in a way that is a fair living wage, so that many of us come into the field that we're dedicated to do this, but we need to, and Black women often cannot stay in the field because they cannot raise their families on the wages that we provide. And so we have got to recognize that that is a value that folks like Kelli, the expertise, and I'm glad you're still here, but we need all the people like you to stay in the field to continue to give back to the community. And so we need to do something about that barrier. Yeah. Bernita, you may follow me.
Thank you, Sharon, so much. I appreciate that. Please, no one take offense at what I'm going to say. Please take no offense at what I'm going to say. But
Bernita, you're on mute.
You're muted.
okay, I'm off of it. Now I gotta start all over again. Okay, I want my point. I want my time back. Okay. And one of the things, we do a great job at working with victims of domestic violence, but we have a tendency to make the victims of domestic violence those who are being abused instead of looking at those who are abusing. And that's a big part of our situation, I believe. We must have funds to work with those who abuse. The brothers, the sisters, the mothers, the fathers, they don't understand the type of trauma that they put the other person in. And in order to do that, we have to have money for that, but there's no money being given to us for that. They're being given to us for the victims services and teaching them how not to be a victim again. But if we're not addressing the person that's doing the abusing, then we're falling short of what we need to do. And that's one of the big problems. And then also, this is the part I don't want anybody to be offensive about. The dominant society, y'all know who I'm talking about. The dominant society, instead of taking the funds that should deservedly go to the areas that need it to address the cultural difference, move that money on over to us, funnel with us, partner with us, allow us to work with our people who have been marginalized for, I'll go back again, for hundreds of years in order to address this issue. Real quick, O.J. Simpson. When the O.J. Simpson thing came up, there was a meeting that was in Riverside. I know none of you were there because none of you was in the movement then except me. It was in Riverside and I was the only Black person there. When I finished at that meeting, I was furious at the types of things that were being said, in particular about African Americans. I was so furious that I was going to walk away from the fight. And as I was walking to my car after they said, well, OJ thinks he's white, I went off on that. Y'all know I went off. I'm going like, you see us looking in the mirror every day. We know that we're not white. So anyway, when I walked out, I said to God, I'm through. I'm through. You give me something else to do. I'm through. He said to me, no, you stay. That's where I called you. That's where I want you. So sort of they more embraced me. We talked about the funding, Sharon, about those getting into that particular, and I'm not bragging. Please know I'm not bragging. I've never taken any money from Project Peacemakers because, and I'm not independent wealthy either. God just provides my needs. So I'm able to say what I want to say and not worry about losing my job about it. I make sure that my staff is doing what they're supposed to do and they follow through. And we have a great COO. I must mention her, Kelli Sturgis. She's a great COO. She's my child, but she's still a great COO. You know, and she's very particular about funding. And she's teaching our clients finances as well as the computer and all of those things to help them move forward. So these are the types of things that I see, and I hope that answered that question. And I'll be quiet because I figure my time is up.
And Kelli, I know you said you only wanted one or two, but I really have to say this. Funding is an issue, but it is not necessarily just the funding, but how the funding is allocated, and also that there are requirements. I shouldn't say requirements, but you can only use the money for certain things. So funding, when it is given, it should be completely open that you could use that funding for whatever your need is. Because even though we are focused on the awareness and prevention, and everyone here is talking about domestic violence, but it sometimes shows up as hunger and homelessness and poverty and sexual assault and suicide attempts. And so if my hands are tied, then that means that that money has to come from somewhere. Now, our agency will not say we're not going to support or help or assist, because we're going to find that money or we're going to do it for free. But that is not fair to us. And there have been some comments in here in the chat section about the people that are working and our employees and our staff and the people that we work with. And why do they have to get paid minimum wage? And so they're traumatized and they're helping trauma survivors, but yet and still their trauma continues on because we're not able to pay them the way they need. Now, and we've been very fortunate because we are very creative with our funding, that we're not just looking for grants. We also do work fee for services. But Sharon, you had mentioned that where are all the Black women when you're in the conferences? Well, we never got the notice. Nobody sent us that note. Somebody needs to let us know that there's a conference somewhere. Someone needs to let us know that there's an opportunity over here. And what happens is they'll say, oh, those Black people, they don't really need to know because that's not what they do. Or maybe they can't understand. And that's not true.
Or either they say that they don't show up anyway. So,
Right.
or they're late when they do.
I'll say one more thing, please, Kelly. Let me just say this. Chantel Smith, when she was, when we first started this COVID thing, she made a comment at one of our alliance meetings, I believe it was. She says, there was a question, Eve, you may remember, about what the agencies had learned during the COVID. And one of the things that she said about the city funding was that she saw where it appeared that what needs to be done is that the agencies just be given amount of money and you do what you want to do and then you account for it later. Okay? And that, I was all for that. You know, don't try to constrain us in this particular area for this. Give us the money, let us use it the way we need to use it, and then be accountable for it. And that would be really helpful to all of us. Okay, I'm through.
Thank you, thank you. So, okay, so now we're getting ready to take questions from the audience. And what I'm gonna do in this section is that I'm going to call on specifically a panelist to answer that particular question. And so we'll hear from each one, but I'm only gonna do one panelist at a time. So do we have any questions from the audience? Miss Jennifer Smith, are you, and if you do have a question and you haven't raised your hand yet, you can also raise your hand, and then me and Jennifer we will be monitoring to see if there's anything that you would like to ask the panelists.
Roman has a question.
Okay, so Roman has a question.
Has a comment.
And then after that, Miss Jocelyn. Okay, so we're gonna have Miss Roman. Miss Roman, what is your question?
Hi, so it's not so much a question as a comment. I am a survivor of post-separation abuse. And two things that I want to discuss in terms of my experience through the family courts, because that's where my experience was amplified over the last 7 years.
Right. So wait a minute, Miss Roman. So here's I'm sorry, I didn't, if you don't have a question and you want to make a comment or statement or share something, then you have 2 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So my experience was I didn't know I was being abused. And when I was put in contact with an agency, it was a mainstream agency downtown, very well funded, that is white run. And my advocate was Latina. She was the first person who really validated my experience, the 2 women who answered the phone and then the one who became my advocate. I eventually transitioned into Genesee Center, and Allison Messenger, who was an amazing advocate through her legal work, made the difference. And what I find is that women of color are more aggressive and assertive in their action and their resource ability, because I believe that we are used to the system not working for us. We have been outside of the system for so long, recognizing that the system is implicitly biased against us, and not going into any of the institutions or agencies believing that we're going to receive the help. And so it's been my experience that women of color move in a more dramatic way. Secondly, I am not the first woman to experience what I'm going through. And as domestic violence is moving forward, abusers are evolving in their form of abuse. And I find that what is happening through the agencies that is disappointing is that no one is acknowledging the post-separation abuse in a really concerted way. No one is tackling the post-separation abuse. And one of the main reasons why women stay is because abusers threaten women that I'm going to take the kids. That is so prevalent. And I've come in contact with so many women, and I just don't understand why there isn't more of a concerted effort by the agencies to deal with this issue, because it seems like.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Roman. I appreciate it. Did you guys hear? Because she did actually ask a question towards the end. So, Dr. Davis, would you like to address that question, please?
Yes, and I think she did. She had a great question, and like I said when in the beginning, that our survivors, our victims, they deal with that. Do I want to stay in this relationship? Do I want to risk losing my children? And that's the one great thing. One of the great things about Genesee Center is that, as she said, with Allison being really aggressive in terms of helping keep families together, we've had lots of our mothers come to Genesee Center with that threat over their head of losing their children, and it's scary for them. It's just something, it's just not, it shouldn't be a privilege, right? That either I want to keep my children, I want to stay in this relationship. And those barriers, the implicit bias, the whole systemic racism, all of these are issues that are on top of their DV, right? They have so much to worry about and so many things to think about. But with systemic racism, they don't know who they can trust. Agencies into our agency, we have to earn their trust. We have to let them know we are here to help you and you're okay. And that even takes a while, before they can get comfortable. And cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness is so important when dealing with this population.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Dr. Davis, I appreciate it. Wait a minute. No, I'm only going to allow one panelist to address a question at a time for the sake of time, because we already at 3:17. But I'm going to address this next question to you, Ms. Kandee. So, Ms. Jocelyn. Ms. Jocelyn.
Yes. Hi, y'all.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm okay.
Would you like to address your question, please?
Yes, I would. First, thank y'all so much for y'all time. I appreciate this information, y'all's transparency and vulnerability. Thank y'all so much for welcoming me. I'm torn between a funding question and being Black and nonprofit sector question, but I guess I'll just, how do we handle, or how do I handle not seeing myself in this work? It was addressed several times of, there's a funding issue when we get hired to the top as far as like professionalism within the nonprofit sector, or like in this community work, we kind of get a little bit further away from the direct client work. There, empathy kind of dwindles away. But what more so I see is less people look like me when I get higher, or when I strive to get higher. There are a lot of gatekeepers, and it's hard to navigate going upward in this field. So does anybody have like any advice on how I should navigate that? Or yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to direct that question to Ms. Kandee. This is a great opportunity to finish up what you was going to say and then answer it at the same time. You have a
and you know I was going to do that, Kelly. So thank you. So let me first address the question. You see a lot of Black faces right here today. I would encourage you to reach out to all of us. Because one of the things that we all did is we reached out to each other and we started supporting each other. And sometimes that might mean that you do have to make 2 or 3 or 20 calls, as Sharon made 30 calls. You might have to come to our events or email us, but we are here and we are accessible. And I can personally say that I have a personal relationship with almost every panelist here, because we make the time and we make the difference to make that call or email so that we can reach them. We are here for you. So if you want to move up or you want to connect with people who look like you, we're here. The problem sometimes is if you don't know where they are, or if you're in a community that they're not. So there's still people, places, and agencies. And a couple of places that I might recommend is there's an organization called CSAE, which is Sisters of Color Ending Sexual Assault, but they work with domestic violence as well. There's the Black Women's Blueprint in New York. There's all different kinds of agencies. Contact me. I have a list of them. I've worked with them, and they've helped me to grow, in addition to all of my sisters on this call. And then what I want to say about children being removed or women having to decide. The bigger problem is, let us train the judges, the social workers, and those people who are trying to remove the children from the parents. Because see, no one just decided, oh, okay, well, I'm going to remove them, except for the people in power. And so our agency had an opportunity 2 years ago to go to a statewide conference, and I trained 155 judges to help them understand why a woman of color, and they specifically asked, woman of color, why would a woman of color get a restraining order and then be back in the car or back at home with their abuser? And why shouldn't I take their children? And I had to explain to them, because very often they're not given a choice. And so they have to get that restraining order so that their children aren't removed. But yet and still, they have nowhere to go. They don't have any money. They don't have the resources, or they still, let's not forget that what we're really talking about is we want the violence to stop, but we don't want the love and the relationship to stop. And so until we address those irregularities and train the people who have the power so that women can keep their children or men can keep their children, then we still have a problem.
Thank you, Ms. Kandee. Do we have another question? Do we have anybody that's asking another question at this time? Please raise your hand, or if you know, or you either just drop your name in the chat box. While we're waiting for,
I'm sorry, I did have a question.
Okay.
Okay, this question came in from Facebook.
Okay.
This is from Dewana Hubbard. She is a former Detective 3 with LAPD who is now an associate marriage family professional clinic counselor. And their focus will be on trauma, in particular with youth childhood trauma recovery. And so her question is, I got to get to the question. She would like to know, what is someone's philosophy in working with the victim of domestic violence and their children, go back to the children, and what steps have been taken to make that process less adversarial while getting the victim support and helping with accountability as they grow out of victimization aspects of the cycle of violence.
Okay, so does anybody want to answer that question?
I'm sorry, I would hate to ask you to read it over because my internet froze. I didn't hear the whole question.
Sure. Yeah. Now that I realize what the question is, here it is. So, she would like to know, what is your philosophy of working with the victim of domestic violence and their children? What steps have been taken to make that process less adversarial while getting the victim support and helping with accountability as they grow out of victimization?
I would have to say, for us with our clients, it's trauma-informed care. Is making them, first allowing them to feel safe, allowing them to know that they are okay. It's the mental health services that they receive to help them to understand where they are and how they got here and how to get out of that. Is the family counseling, it's the group, the groups that are designed, for that, for the parents to kind of hear other stories and not believe it was just them, and these groups were designed so that they can, communicate with one another and help to build each other. And it's just a whole package. I think that helping the families understand that they're safe and understand how they, and work through the issues of domestic violence, because there's so many different parts to this. And just letting them, allowing them a space to be okay, get themselves together, because, our clients can stay for 2 years, and allow them to know that it's okay, that they will be self-sufficient, right? And give them the space to do that, to heal, to do everything that they need to do.
Can I add something? Can I add something? I really, when I listened to that question, and I'm just going to be frankly honest, it actually, the way it was asked, and I'm not saying it was anybody's intention to ask it this way, it actually was asked with some bias behind it. And so when you are already coming to the forefront with somebody thinking how they should be interacting with their children, and you're coming with those beliefs, right then and there, you already have lost the opportunity to create empathy. And I think that's oftentimes happens unintentionally. Unconscious bias happens in all of our programs. It happens in culturally specific organizations. It happens in mainstream organizations. And so I think that we as an organization, yeah, we talk about trauma-informed. We use that word so much now, right? But really, we have to really think about what are the biases that we are bringing when we interact with that participant. What are we bringing to the table, and how can we step back out of that bias and create a culture of empathy? And so I just wanted to share that.
Okay, and I just have to say as well.
If I may.
Wait a minute. It's two people speaking at one time, so I'm trying to see who is actually
I'm
speaking.
sorry, with Charmaine, I was just gonna, was saying to her that I totally understand with that trauma-informed care, but if I really believe, and our staff is trained on trauma-informed care, but I think if you are meeting this person, and this is not just clients or, this is staff, if you're meeting folks knowing that they have experienced some traumas in their lives, and that trauma has it's guiding, it's the lens, it's why they see the world the way they do. I think you can step away from that bias, because then you know that through their trauma, that's how they see the world, and their parenting skills, and these things that are passed down to us. There's no right and wrong. We just help them to connect, to
Correct.
not be afraid.
Yeah.
To
And I don't disagree with you. I think that the way that question was posed, I'm saying, if you listen to the question, it's already putting forward a bias that something that they're doing is wrong.
Let me just say this, Tara, that before we move forward, is that I totally agree, because when I heard her read it the second time, I watched the expression on my face, because I felt the same thing as well. But Tara, you're saying the same thing that Dr. Davis is saying. You just guys are saying it kind of like in a different way. I'm about to move forward because Elizabeth has her hand raised, and she's been asking me a couple of times to get to her question. And then I'm gonna give it to you, Miss Bernita. And then when I give it to you, Miss Bernita, then you can wrap up what you was about to say, like Kandee did. So Miss Elizabeth, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. And first,
Hi.
it's like really amazed by you all. This is such an amazing panel, and I'm so honored that I get to work with such amazing advocates. And I guess one of my biggest questions, I run a domestic violence shelter organization that is staffed mainly by Latinas, and a majority of all of our direct service staff speak Spanish. We don't have any Black people on staff right now. And I know that the survivors of African descent who come to our shelter often have a different experience than our immigrant survivors, right? And so we've done some work around implicit bias, but I guess my biggest struggle is, where do we even begin to start to address the fact that we don't even employ Black people, and then how do we get people employed if one of our requirements continues to be speaking Spanish? Like, do we take that out? Do we see what happens? I don't know. But so just kind of struggling on where I go next beyond training around implicit bias, maybe an examination of our policies, but wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. I've been given that question to answer, right? Hi, Elizabeth. There are a number of agencies, of programs that have webinars on a regular basis that can give you some more information about that. Women of Color Network for one, Ywca for another, to give you some understanding about that. But yes, you do need to, there are African Americans who speak Spanish. Most of them, of course, many of them are in the corporate field. So that is an issue. A lot of them don't. My daughter does, and I also have another Black staff person that does speak Spanish as well. But they are far few and in between, especially for this work. So that's one avenue that I would suggest to you, that make a couple of the positions open where they don't have to speak Spanish, and that will probably help in some way. So that's my biggest suggestion to you. to learn more about that explicit bias and those things that are going out there. I mean, some really fantastic. Eve's been in on a couple of them. And then one of the things I want to go back to, the other one is about patience. And working with these clients, you have to have patience. You heard us mention earlier, I think it was Kandee mentioned earlier, about this is not an 8 to 5 job. This is extended. And when you're working with individuals who have had as much trauma as the ones that we are dealing with, that we're serving, then you need to have patience with them, because they may not be telling you everything that they need to tell you when you first meet them. They're not going to do that, because they have to trust you. They have to know who you are and what you present and how you present it. And that's really important that we remember that, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. And when they say the journey of 1,000 miles start with one step, it takes time to build that and to infiltrate, if you would, using my old cop language, into those families where it is so heavily laden. Okay, thank you. And Daryl Clutchfield's been trying to ask a question for a long time.
Yes. I was getting ready to go to Daryl because he's the next up, and then after that we have James before we get ready to start wrapping it up. But I want to double back real quick what Tara said about servicing our clients, right? Because that was an issue when I worked at the agency I worked for, and then when I was transferred over to the shelter part of the agency, I noticed that the African American clients were always labeled as difficult. It was a challenge. They were non-cooperative. And I watched how the other clients was given time after time this leniency, this opportunity to redeem themselves for whatever it is that they done. But the African American clients were immediately removed, or was told that they was a threat to the other clients. And then I became the difficult worker. I became the difficult case manager when I began to advocate and put the supervisor, the program manager, and everybody else on blast as to how the treatment of African American clients were as opposed to all other clients. And we were in Hollywood. So by us being in Hollywood, it was a real diverse community. We had Native American, white, Black, you know, everybody, Latino, we had them all. But the African American women always had the biggest challenge. And as well as when I was working in the resource center. And then when my African-American clients and the clients that were participants, that were coming to this resource center started to ask the supervisor, can I change my case manager over to her because she understands what I'm going through? The supervisor then accused me of somehow discrediting the other staff members and not supporting them because the African-American clients wanted me as a case manager because I knew where they had came from. I understood their language. I was able to talk to them in a way that to navigate them through the system and get them to a place of trusting the same entities that we were told and we grew up to not trust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so those are some of the barriers as we talk about. And there's one more thing I want to say before I pass it over to Daryl, is that you were talking about separation of the children in order to receive DV services or to get the help that's needed. And I always wondered why they don't have a shelter for the batterer. Why they never have a shelter for the batterer, or a place where the I don't want to say the batterer, but the violence offender can go to receive the healing. I know that when it's one thing when you're dealing with a offender who is very violent, have done some heinous things to their victim. But then it's another thing when you're going through a cycle of violence that's within the community, that's within the house, and it's a way of life. It's a way of life, and it's about behavior. It's about education. It's about treatment. It's about getting them to understand their behaviors. But why do we have to separate the children or remove the children? Why haven't we created something for men to go, or for women to go, or for whoever to go, in order to receive that same type of treatment and then be reintegrated back into the home without having to do it in jail? Without having to actually go to jail in order to do that and receive continual punitive damages. So that's, I mean, punitive repercussions. So let's go to Daryl. That's not a question that y'all don't have to answer, but it's just one that was rhetorically in my mind. So Mr. Daryl, can you please ask your question, please?
Yes, what I'm offering right now is not really just a question, but I'm offering a solution, and I'm offering unity to everybody on here, no matter what agency, background, or whatever. And you may say, like, a guy like me, domestic violence, how, why? Okay, well, let me tell you this. When you have a house that's full and plagued with domestic violence, you have a little kid in that house, and that it can have repercussions on that kid. And let's just speak about myself. Dealing with that can turn you into something you never thought you would be. You will turn into a gang-banging, drug-dealing maniac. I'm talking about somebody that will shoot you, rob you, leave you for dead, period. Because your happiness at home is so bad, and then you run away from home, now you're in the gang, and really you just shooting and robbing people because you feel like it. It just messes you up. So right now, what I'm saying is this, like you said about different facilities, what we have right now is the Community Business Coalition, and we have a project called Stop the Killing. It's a peace and unity project, but what we're doing is this, we are making it where it helps the community and the families and all the organizations make money. So now we have a different ball game, because a lot of houses, if it was higher education and better money or better business ownership going on, we'd be in a better situation. So that's what I'm offering. Right now, we have the project kicked off right now. I left my websites in there, but anybody, any entity want to make money for your family, you want to make money for your organization and the community, we have the Community Business Coalition. We're going to start opening up facilities where we can run them the way we need to run them. We have all the money we need to run them, and we'll be self-sufficient and not running out of money, because we're going to own real estate. We're going to own all kind of music, film, and TV projects. Everything is lined up. We just have to get together and do it. Anybody see my website? I put it in there. I put it in again. Contact me. It's cool. Everybody going to be making money. We're going to help everybody out. But like I said, thank God that my life is different. I went to school. I graduated LA Film School. Thank God they didn't give me life in prison. I almost got life in prison. I almost got killed 4 times in one night. That was just one night. Believe me, God saved me and put me in a better position. So now I'm a different person. I've been home from prison 28 years now. So I can tell you how to make it work. I don't smoke weed no more. I ain't smoked weed in 22 years. So believe me, I can take you from a gang-banging, drug-dealing person, whether male or female, and then God made me be a pastor. I don't know what God had me do that for. What God say do, just do it. But anyway, that is my solution. That is my solution, and everybody welcome to make money for themselves, their organization, and their families.
Thank you so much, Daryl. I appreciate you. Appreciate your testimony as well. Mr. James. Mr. James, can you unmute yourself? Hi, Mr. James. What is your question to the staff? Excuse me. What is your question to the panelists? And if you have a statement, and you have 2 minutes before we move forward in wrapping this conversation up.
Thank you. And those of you, there are a few on here who know me and have heard my views on it. So here goes. And on the bottom of my card, I have a back of it that says, to comfort the afflicted and unmercifully afflict the comfortable. And with that, let me start. We need to start calling out names. I am so tired of people saying this entity or this agency. Say up front, Haven House, House of Ruth, Megan Caldwell, whomever, call them out. The shelters for batterers, that sounds like a really interesting observation. At the February meeting of the DV Council, a woman got up at the end and asked a question, and I described her as someone who spoke as though she were taking the high school SATs. So she wasn't inarticulate. And I watched 75 people squirm because this person was asking for help and they didn't do a hot darn thing for her. And so you ask what the problem is. The problem is internal. It's not just hiring Black people, it's also addressing the systemic problems in your agencies. And the shelters, so if we talk about shelters, trauma-informed, we can all get into disagreement about that, but there's a great article on trauma-informed advocacy, and we don't call, if we're trauma-informed, we don't describe the people with whom we work as participants or clients. They are the people with whom we work. Last point, go into a shelter and you say you're trauma-informed or you want to work with Black women. How many of these shelters have a small jar of Vaseline? And with that, I'm through.
Woo, 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 woo. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. James.
Kelli?
Miss Gerald,
I was gonna say Miss Geraldine Staple.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Miss Geraldine. I was just getting ready. Thank you so much, Kandee. I was getting ready to call her. Miss Geraldine, do you like to either make a statement or ask a question?
Yes, one question and a statement. Okay. I see that the chat has been disabled, so we're not able to save it with all of that wonderful information and contact information. So if something could be done about that. But I have been thinking, listening to everyone speak. I've been involved for a long time. I'm the DVA rep for CD4, Councilman Rue's rep at this point. First of all, to Kandee, I remember when you came to a meeting many years ago, and I would publicly like to apologize to you if I did anything or said anything that made you feel uncomfortable, because as now the National Organization for Women, which is one of the organizations that I work with, one of our core issues, of course, is to end racism. So that would be very counterproductive to one of my lifelong missions have been, as I have been, I think, an ally since I was 5 years old. So I just wanted everybody to know that and hope that you would accept an apology and ask for your forgiveness if I had anything to do with making you feel uncomfortable. And Kelli, I remember you when you first came and told your story, and you were just going back, to college and what have you. And my goodness, it just is so heartwarming to see how you've grown. Oh my goodness, I'm so proud of you. You are just doing fantastic. And lastly, I would really like to congratulate everyone on pulling this presentation together. It's long overdue. And I would hope that you would consider doing more regular group meetings like this, and extend it out, build it out to be including more people that really need to be involved in these conversations, and to become more aware of where we lack in terms of our services and what we are providing.
Yeah.
So
Thank
it
you
takes
so
that kind of
much.
awareness. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Kelli,
you so much.
can I
Mr.
address
James.
that?
Yes. You
Okay,
have
I'll
1
make it
minute.
very brief.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, I'll make it very brief. Thank you very much for the apology. That was the incident you're talking about, was at the Domestic Violence Council, I believe it was, and it turned me away from that council. And I'm thankful to have Eve as the leader, because I'm definitely coming back. But that, to be harassed That's what I felt like. And I do thank you very much for that apology. And it is received. And then also I apologize, didn't realize the chat was disabled, and I did fix it. So all of this information is saved and everyone can access it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kandee. I appreciate.
Hi, this is
Wait a
this is Suzette over the phone. If I may just interject really quick.
No, I'm sorry. We have to move forward. We have already
Could I
had our.
just say something really quickly?
Okay, it's
This is
Alicia.
Suzette in Skid Row, and I just want to ask if you all could be more involved and engaged in the Skid Row community, as we need more Black women leaders like yourself engaged in the work, because we are predominantly a Black women of trauma displaced into a community, an impoverished community. We need more Black women leaders like yourselves supporting our needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that comment. All right, so moving forward, I got a question now. Thank you so much for the audience that thank you so much for the questions and the comments that you guys from the audience have gave the panelists. Appreciate you very much, Kandee.
I'm sorry, there's just one last question, and it is from Mr. Hector Ramirez. And the question is, services for Black men, both heterosexual and LGBTQIAAS men, how has this progressed or not in Los Angeles County?
Okay, so let me see who has not had a chance to answer the question directly. If you want to take it, Kandee, you can. I'm trying to see who has their hand up to actually answer that question. And let me just say this before Kandee, okay, no, go ahead on and answer the question, Kandee, and I got something I just want to double back and say, because I never got a chance because everybody was jumping in to address something that Mr. James said. But would you like to answer that?
This is from my perspective, and I've done some work. We do a lot of work with the LGBTQIAA community. However, there's not enough work that is being done. And I believe that Black men that are in abusive relationships are very often unseen unless they are the abuser. And so there needs to be more services, more programs, more allocation, especially more culturally specific, and those that are open to relationships that are not just heterosexual. And that everyone needs to be aware that, first off, violence and abuse, for those, everyone on the call knows, but violence and abuse is about trauma and power. And then when you're looking at two men, sometimes people think it's, how does that happen? But it's not based on the relationship, it's based on the people. And so there needs to be more programs and services. There is not enough. And I believe Bernita's been talking about this all day long, is that we really need to provide programs and services and healing for the abuser. And until we bring boys and men into the conversation, we're just not going to get this stopped. And that's why our agency does have a program called Promoting Healthy Manhood, and it's a conference where all boys and men are invited. And Bernita, I believe, I want to switch this over to you because I know that you do work with men.
Yes, we do. We have 32 men in our program, and very faithful about coming to get the services that we provide. And then there's also, we're talking about the shelters. There's also Valley Oasis. You can contact them because they do servicing. But all shelters are supposed to be receiving victims of domestic violence, male and female. So now I don't know, because I don't go to the shelter meetings programs. Maybe Dr. Davis could speak on that. But I know that Rainbow also, Elizabeth Eastland, they also, at one point were receiving men, so I'm not sure if they still do. But there are some programs out there. There's just not a lot of them that are being known. But we service everyone that needs servicing at Project Peacemakers.
In Genesee, we do have men. We have about 6 men at our shelter now.
Yeah. So I also want to just say this because I didn't say anything about back to the basics, but we incorporate most of my my partners and my staff are men, and so we partner with gang interventionists, those who men that have domestic violence education, but we mostly work with the offenders or those that are proven risk of violence. So that's what we do with Back to the Basics. But going back to what James, what you said about why we don't name those names, and I get it because I'm the same way. Like I'll shoot from the hip. It is what it is. I'm gonna call you out. But the reason why I didn't call out the agency because it wasn't the agency, and the agency does phenomenal work, and I know that they are diverse. It was that particular leadership that they had in place because of the letters and her resume, and it was phenomenal. Like, you don't know who people really are. They only show up as the representative. But once on the other side, she was actually labeled with our staff as, dang, she fits all the criteria of a batterer. But so, and in the DV field. So it wasn't actually the agency. And I'm glad I never badmouthed the agency. It was the leadership they had in place that eventually had to be removed. So thank you. Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, James. Okay, so I'm about.
You're muted.
The last question I was going to answer, but I think you guys kind of already talked about it, was like what needs to be in place? What do we need to do? What steps we need to do to have more inclusiveness with African American leadership, also like having funding. And I think we kind of touched bases on that. And we already knew that we was not going to be able to dive deeply into this conversation just in having this one conversation. Because it's so, like you said, you're talking about 30, 40, 50, 60 years of systematic racism, oppression, and everything else like that. That cannot be summed up in an hour and a half ass conversation. Okay? So some things are going to be having to, okay, I'm gonna say this, Bernita, real quick.
Fair.
I gotta hand it back over to Eve because she's getting ready to wrap it up because it is 3:52. Okay.
Possibly a fair, you know how we have different kinds of fairs in a large place. I know we can't do it right now because of the COVID situation, but maybe a fair to introduce all of the programs to those who do fund, and some of our, particularly some of our Black funding companies, you know, that are doing certain things. They need to know about what we need so that we can address this part that they're trying to address and not really knowing what it needs to be done. They need grassroots information. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernita. I appreciate everyone's wisdom. I appreciate everyone's expertise, their knowledge, their experiences, their transparency, and their openness. And so with that being said, I just want to say, I want to thank the panelists today, and I'm going to hand it back over to Eve. Thank you, Eve, for hosting.
Okay, thanks to everyone for certainly the panelists, Kelly, and then everyone in the audience for joining us. I want to do a little pitch here for the DV Council. Number one, I want you to know we are focused on addressing the issues raised about DCFS. You are all invited to join our DV Child Welfare Committee. We are working actually with DCFS to address the very issues you are talking about that have historically harmed survivors of DV, and particularly women of color who are survivors of DV. So that's really one of our largest projects. And we actually are involved in a grant with some of the agencies, including Genesee, to address some of these problems. Also, I would urge you all to come to the DV Council meetings. We're open to the public. Our website, I put in the box, but if you'd like to get our daily emails, which also announce all of our meetings, it's dvc@ph.lacounty.gov. And this is only the first step. Bernita, that's a fantastic idea. And we want to both continue to talk and but to do things as well. So we're slightly limited because the DV Council's me and administrative support Jolene, but we have all of you wonderful people, so we can make the change. This is not an overnight event, as you know, and you've suffered far too long, and it hurts me to say that. But you know, as Bernita said, a long journey starts with the first step. So thank you to my friends and partners in this struggle, and we will continue to talk. Thank you for attending, and we will continue to do everything we can to make this better, more equitable and fairer, and better for everybody in Los Angeles. So thank you, and we'll see all you guys, and come to the DV Council. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Eve. Thank you all. Thank all of our amazing panelists. Can we give them a round of applause?
Woo! Unmute yourself and
Yes,
give a round
unmute
of applause.
yourselves.
Yes, unmute
We
yourself.
want to hear from you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Woo! That was a great conversation. It was awesome. We had some awesome questions and feedback and engagement from the audience. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys for staying the long haul. You guys you was with us from beginning to end, and so we thank you for caring enough to have this conversation with us. Appreciate it. All right, you guys, be blessed. Stay safe. Okay. Remember to vote.
And wear a mask.
And wear a mask.
And wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Social distance.
I had it already. I had it already.
Really?
So that's why I'm telling So that's why I'm telling you, these are things you need to do. Seriously. It is not fun at all. I had
wear
it
a mask.
Yes.
And for everyone's note, I will be making a copy of this video. I will email it out to everyone who has registered. And then also all of the comments, we've captured them and they will also be sent out, because I want you all to know who's here, and there's some great information and connection opportunities. Don't be afraid to pick up a phone, make a call, or email someone today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.